Napple Tale for the Sega Dreamcast is like a 3D platformer that Sega put down, I think, like pretty late in the system's life. I think it was like 2000, and the developer of the game was a company called Chime. But it was something that I think really stood out to people who were looking at import games at the time, because it has a really cute, like, fairy tale aesthetic. Everyone is kind of like these little animal people kind of thing, and the main girl, her name's like Porsche or something like that. She has this like very, I don't know if eccentric is the right word, hair, like this big hair that goes back into a crown and stuff like that. But it's just like super colorful, and the character designs are just like really, really appealing overall. And the dialogue is like really charming too, which unfortunately I was streaming this game, so it made it really hard to appreciate the dialogue as much as I would have if I was playing it on my own probably. But it's just this really like cute looking game, very games for girls feeling, even though I don't necessarily know if it was like created with only like girl players in mind or something like that, but I believe it was a largely lady staff kind of thing. So, but basically the idea behind the game is that you're a girl who kind of ends up in this town. It's like kind of a, I don't know if netherworld is the right word, but when I say netherworld, like I don't mean it in like a dark like hell kind of sense. It is very, very like cute, colorful town, and each avenue in town is broken up into seasons. So there's 4 different main roads, and they all come together at a fountain in the center of the road and things like that. And each of the seasons basically are like 2 to 3 levels. So you can go down the road, and there's a bunch of houses down those roads, but at the end there's like an exit that sends you out, and you can go choose like 2 to 3 levels that you can play. And even though it's like a 3D platforming and like a side-scrolling 3D platformer, it's not very linear at all. It's more like quest-based almost, where you go back to town, you get a quest, and then you kind of got to figure out, you know, which season you need to go to and which level you need to go to. And sometimes you don't even need to play through the whole level. You just need to like go and explore it, and then, you know, go get the thing you need, and then leave basically. So there's a ton of exploration in this game, and that also means a lot of backtracking too to some extent. But it's very much like built into the game's design itself. The levels and gameplay, I will say, are pretty straightforward. Like, I think this is something I feared even just coming into it in the first place, where, like, I love the look of this game, I love everything about it, like, aesthetically, but when I looked at the gameplay, I was like, this kind of looks like your traditional, you know, side-scrolling platform. A little bit of, like, 3D space you can kind of navigate back and forth, so I guess it's, like, 2.5D, maybe? I guess it depends on how strict you are about the definition of that. I know some people have very strict definitions, but you can, there's, like, a 3D space you can kind of move back and forth in a little bit. And it's just kind of like, you know, just go left to right kind of thing and jump on various platforms. There's like these treasure chests you can get and items, and those items you can basically go and like make crafting material out of them. And there are like items you can get to like help you in combat and things like that, but they're really not that important. They make these things called paffets, which are little pets basically. The paffets, in my opinion, are more important in like quest stuff, where they need you to do something specifically with specific paffets for like individual quests. So the ones that are actually like, you know, combat paffets and things like that, I just never ended up using much. And Porsche has this like giant wand that if you smack enemies with, like, most of the time you'll kill them in like 1 or 2 hits basically. So I would really say the gameplay as a whole is just not really the focus of this game in general. Like it's good enough to get the job done. Like it gets the point across, or like kind of just acts as a good way to, like, you know, take you from point A to point B kind of thing. But this game, I would say, is more probably about like just going around and talking to the different like townsfolk and things like that. You know, it's a game that I think a lot of people had a lot of trouble with initially, because it didn't have a fan translation for a really long time. You know, it came out in like 2000, and I think people were really attracted by it because of its aesthetics and things like that. But there's just like a really high language barrier, and I did try to like look up a guide at one point, and the one guide I did find online just seemed a little hard to follow, I will say. So I think a lot of people struggled to really enjoy it, even though they probably really wanted to. And I'm somebody who never really looked into playing it, but like I always just remember how distinct it looked and things like that. But thankfully there was a fan translation that was put out about a year or 2 ago, And as far as I can tell, it's great overall. There's a couple of small issues with just like text spacing and in terms of like some items, just because, you know, how big of a space they can fit, you know, English letters into some windows. And then there's also like kind of like a quest log kind of thing, and that quest log seems to break sometimes, and it doesn't properly load up for the most part. But I say overall, it's pretty minor. But the dialogue in the game is just like super lighthearted, and so you just kind of walk around town. Everybody has their problems. You know, Porsche has like this character called Stray Nap, and they both kind of work together to solve people's problems in town. And like everyone just feels very like I don't know how to put it. Everyone, I guess Porsche like really feels confident in herself in a lot of ways. That feels pretty nice. Like she's not a character that's really developing much. I feel like it feels like she's more of there to like develop this world of people who are in the Netherlands and have, you know, these problems kind of thing. So because of that kind of like character interaction being the focus, though, a lot of the game I think comes down to just like walking around town and talking to people and just kind of enjoying the dialogue. And I think that fits well because the game doesn't provide a lot of direction for you. I was talking to a couple people before I streamed the game, and they mentioned that they got stuck at some point and couldn't figure it out. And I did have to get help. One of the lead translators on the project, thankfully, messaged me to help me out towards the end of the game. Although, again, I was streaming it, so there's a little bit more of a urgency to push forward, where if I was just playing by myself, I probably would have ran around a lot more kind of thing. But yeah, it's a game that just has a lot of wandering, and you'll have to spend a lot of time just going into town, talking to people like randomly, and then just seeing if they're going to give you a quest. And then, you know, even if something doesn't seem like it's important quest line wise for like the main story, it might still be worth doing that quest to see if it like connects to the main quest at all. And all the characters I think are generally fun to just like learn about overall too. So anyways, it's definitely a game that is mostly about charm, but it's not like a Rhapsody musical adventure kind of situation, where I feel like Rhapsody is a game that you play despite the gameplay in a lot of ways. Where I think Napple Tale is a game that has solid gameplay, but it's more about, you know, absorbing yourself into that world and really appreciating the characters and things like that. So again, huge thanks to the people who fan translated it, because like really, I think a game like this, you can definitely appreciate some things about it without reading it, but I do think you know, having an actual translation of it and everything is a big deal for kind of the core of this game and making it work. So definitely worth a playthrough in my opinion. If you have a Dreamcast, it's pretty easy to burn. You know, Dreamcasts, I think maybe some late model Dreamcasts are a little harder to deal with, but early ones for the most part, as long as you have the right files in place, you know, you basically just burn the game to a disc and then just drop it into your retail Dreamcast, and it'll just boot up without too much trouble. I use an archival quality CDR, so that might help out as well. But I haven't tried just using like a standard CDR. But using an archival quality CDR, I didn't have any issues with like skipping or anything like that. So definitely a fun way. There's also like, you know, ODE options for the Dreamcast where you can use an SD card instead. So check it out.